This is the Surface 604 Boar E350. It's the second model that I've seen from Surface 604, and the last one was pretty sweet. It was, fat tire electric bike that used kind of rear rack battery and kind of the 350 watt hub motor. It worked great, but it was kind of rear heavy and a little less refined. So they've gone back to the drawing board and really dialed things in with this new model. And I'm having a blast on it. Not only does it have the integrated down tube battery and kind of a nicer frame with that low cut step and 15 millimeter through axle and these nicer rims here with sort of the punch out for reduced weight, you get all of that. And you also get 3 colors. So you get this white that we're looking at, kind of a neon green that matches kind of this color. And then there's black. And 2 sizes, so there's 17.5 or 19, kind of like a small, medium, and then medium large, depending on your height and your leg length. This is a large frame that I'm on right now. It's working pretty well. I'm about 5'9", so the kind of the curved top tube makes it a little easier to stand over, and it handles pretty well. It is a little bit heavier, being a fat bike. We're looking at 57 pounds, and the battery pack itself is about 7 pounds. So if you took that off, you could reduce it and be about 50. And then, of course, you can take off the front wheel, which I love. You've got kind of the quick release skewer there. I did notice when riding that there's a little bit of kind of wiggle there. And I was talking to the guys that made this. I'm actually in Whistler. Crankworks is going on right now. A lot of people riding around on bikes. You get a lot of really positive attention and interest on a bike like this because it's just so fun. But the reason that they went with kind of this through axle was partially for strength, but also so that you could swap out the front fork and actually use a suspension fork. So there's the RockShox Bluto, or there's, I think it's a RST Renegade. So you could have lockout, you could have some travel and some cushion. Of course, the tires themselves, these are Kenda Juggernauts. They're 26 by 4, so they're the traditional fat tire size. You can see right there, up to 30 PSI. I'm running them at 20, but they go all the way down to 5. So that adds a lot of cushion right there. And in fact, you can reduce the air pressure and you get a nice beach ride and get good grip and kind of that soft, cushy feel. Or for snow or even deeper sand, this is kind of hard pack stuff. But whether it's intended to be off-road in your case or you want to use it for a commuting platform, it's really designed to be versatile. And I love that it's got these kind of threaded eyelets here on the seat stays all the way down to here. It's got that center hole. Same with the front. And then check this out. You've got 2 nice bosses on the front as well. And they have a really cool rack that just, it's kind of sets up right here. It will be attached to the fork, so when you turn, there's going to be a little bit more momentum and it's going to impact handling. But it's an awesome rack, and they've got a really great rack for the back too, and it's sort of oversized, and it's got these cross beams that I think would work really well for panniers, kind of even a connector at the bottom. So each of those, it's $150 extra. We're talking Canadian dollars in some of this. And there's also kind of the U.S. exchange rate thing. Right now, the bike's about $2,500. That's with shipping to the U.S. So not bad at all, in my opinion. Definitely a good price for this, for something that's a little bit more refined. We've got a 10-speed cog set in the rear with SRAM X5, and that's kind of middle of the range for SRAM. So it's definitely not X9 kind of entry level. It's not the top, but a lot of times those are trying to be lightweight and they're maybe a little less durable. So having 10, gears is awesome because this is a bit heavier, and the wheels, they take a little bit more energy to get them going. And if you're climbing and stuff, it's just going to make it that much easier having a big ring. And I've seen some fat bikes that they just have seven gears or maybe even 1, and that really limits how you can use the bike. Also, making it better for kind of climbing and cruising around is this 34 tooth kind of a FSA hollow spindle, sealed bottom bracket, really stiff, lightweight, good stuff. And then, of course, I love the Wellgo pedals. Oversized platform. They've got these metal nubs. They're not going to slip. They're the FSA Comet cranks. So good stuff. The guys that were working on this, they're, mountain bike riders and stuff. And they care about, having better parts and building something that's a little bit more durable, something that's also comfortable at the same time. Okay, so for them, like, they ride their bikes on the trails, and this is to get around town and have fun, and that's why you're seeing these not stock handlebars. But I actually really like them, so we were talking like, oh, should we take them off for the review? I just wanted to show what's possible with this. This definitely brings your arms up and back and gives you that upright kind of like relaxed seating position. The stock bars look like this, so you can see the stem is a little bit longer, and there's like a really low rise on them. They're pretty wide. If we had those on the bike, in fact, maybe I should just, bring them up here. You can kind of see how you'd really be leaning a lot further forward. And even the saddle here, that's Velo Plush. We've got this more active Velo saddle that comes stock. So you can see it's a little less comfortable. Still gets the job done. It looks nice, kind of matches the gray. The diameter on this is 27.2. So if you want to get your own seat post, maybe like a Thud Buster or Body Float or something, you totally could. It's a very standard size. I like that. And then of course, you got the charger. It's a 2-amp charger, weighs about 1.3 pounds. Kind of what you'd expect for an electric bike, but great that you can bring that along. Some of the complaints from the original Surface 604 bike was just that, like, oh, the range, it had a throttle and pedal assist, where this one only has pedal assist. So some people might have been like just really riding on that throttle the whole time, and being a heavier bike and trying to just like juice it that way, the range definitely suffers. You get that like 15 mile per charge range. Well, they've upgraded the battery now to help with that, and they've only done pedal assist, and it has a torque sensor. So whereas before it was just sensing that you were moving your pedals, now you have to contribute a little bit. And it adds a little bit of personal energy that you're expending riding, but what I found is that it actually feels really good. I like the setup that they've got here. What they're using is a TMM4 torque sensor. It's that like silver plate down there. So it's a strain gauge. It senses that you're actually pulling on the chain, not just moving. But they've set it in such a way that it's fairly sensitive. So I didn't feel like I was overworking my knees or getting out of breath or anything, and I could always arrow up to a higher level of assist. And it was really comfortable. Easy Motion uses this same part, but on their bikes, I found that it's delayed in terms of cutoff, and it takes extra energy to get it going. And it's just, over time, I've kind of become, I don't know, I've had mixed experiences with it. And considering there's stuff like the Bosch system that's measuring your speed and cadence and torque and all of these other factors, it sort of seems like, like what can we do to dial this in? But there is a lot of software and different settings that they can adjust. And I feel like Surface 604 team has done a great job. And maybe part of it is just there's more weight here, with the tires. And so it's a little more responsive. If you're riding this off-road and the chain is bouncing, and you're in one of the higher levels of assist, there is some of that like accidental activation where the bike kind of goes forward a little bit and maybe you didn't mean it to. And I feel like that's just because of the weight of the chain bouncing around, but it's pretty tight and the drivetrain is nice. So it hasn't been as much of an issue. And because there's more mass here, it has never felt like out of control or anything. So I like that. What we've got in the back in terms of motors is a Bafang 350 watt internally geared fat bike specific hub with these nice sturdy spokes. Like, it's a really good setup. It looks nice, and it almost sort of hides behind the cassette. And on the opposite side, we've got that 160 millimeter hydraulic Tektro Auriga disc brake going on. There's no quick release in the rear, only the front. 160 millimeters in the front as well, but you do have the quick release. Nice levers, Tektro Auriga. So all across, like, good stuff. Good stopping power, and 160 millimeters is decent. Like, I've noticed a little bit of squeaking and stuff because this is sort of the demo bike and we're out, getting it wet and going through sand. But I haven't had a problem stopping at all. So that's the drive system. And I want to reiterate, these days it's like, 500 watt, 750 watt. This thing works amazingly well. Like, I'm surprised, and I've seen kind of the same design on some of the other fat bikes for 2016. And I don't know, it's just dialed in. Maybe with the torque sensor, there's just a real feeling of power with this bike. And I've been going up hills and across like gravel and stuff. I'll show that in the ride test, but actually pleasantly surprised with the performance on that. Okay, so on to the battery pack. You can see it's right there mounted to the down tube, 36 volt, 13 amp hours. Definitely got kind of a jump up in terms of capacity from the older battery pack. Talked about it being 7 pounds. Getting it off is not really very difficult. You just put the key in, kind of have to twist it, and then use this little lever, pull it out, real easy. Look at that. Really seats nicely in the frame. It keeps the weight low, feels really stable when you're riding. It's not like rattling around a whole lot. There's the plug. Of course, the pack can be charged on or off the bike, which is nice. You can see at this end there's like a little rubber flap. There's the power charge port, and it's got a little USB charging port. So whether it's on the bike or not, you could kind of use this as backup power, which is nice. And I feel like there's enough room on the down tube to actually, there we go, it clicks in. There's enough room here with the seat tube that you can still get this rubber flap up and you can reach this if it's on the bike. So charging on or off the bike, super good. You know, the colors look nice. The weight distribution is good. It really blends in. Like we're getting to, it's very purpose built. You see actually the wire is run through the frame. Let me go on the other side and get a little bit of a close up on that. You can see where it kind of comes out and goes down the bottom. Definitely custom built to be a little bit wider, to be sturdy and clean and oversized, kind of a tapered head tube. Again, I think that would work pretty well with a suspension fork, but I've had a blast just, you know, as is as well. So very cool. Okay, so talked about all these different elements, the chargers, all the stock stuff. Now we're gonna get to operating this bike. Unfortunately, this is a two-step process, and I've seen this battery design on some other bikes. It's the same deal. You've got to press this power button down here, and then there's a little bit of a kind of an LED readout, but you can't really see it while you're riding. And even from the side, it's sort of a dark color right there. So once you've done that, you press power again up here, a couple seconds, and the display comes to life. I like the display. It fits pretty nicely. It can swivel a little bit front to back and reduce glare. You've got all the major readouts and really fine increments on the battery capacity, so you can tell, like, you know, pretty accurately how much battery you have left. It's not just like 5 big chunks. You've got your speed, trip distance, and you can cycle through some of those with the eye. So you got total distance, max speed, average speed, that kind of stuff. And then there's even like a little light button, so you can turn on backlighting or turn it off if it's distracting at night. And since this is a pedal assist bike, you know, I just find myself choosing one of the different levels. There's 5. So you can go to none with just bicycle, and we're using it as a cycle computer now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And of course, the higher you go, the more power you're gonna get, and the more climbing ability you'll have, but you'll also be using the battery faster. So I've kind of done some math and been riding around on this thing, and I haven't even used 1 tick on the battery, and I've gone several miles. I'd estimate, like, you know, 25 miles is probably, you know, depending on the tire pressure and the terrain and stuff, it's fairly impressive in terms of range, and especially because of the pedal assist. So that's pretty cool. You'll notice that on this handlebar setup, because it's so high, the kind of the display panel, it's in far, right? So I'd have to actually take my hand off to mess with this. That wouldn't necessarily be the case with the stock handlebar because it's straight. It's going to be able to extend. You don't have to deal with these curves and stuff. So do keep that in mind. This is still my preference, but, you know, there are trade-offs involved. And then we've got these just, you know, kind of standard rubber grips, no lockers or anything, but for this type of bike, I think that's fine. Got the Aruga hydraulic brakes, the SRAM X5 trigger shifters. It's a pretty clean cockpit. It's very intuitive that way. So I like it. I like the experience so far has been really, really good. And I can tell that there's like an emphasis on the ride quality and, you know, people who like to ride bikes first and then thinking about like making something that's kind of fun, pretty affordable, especially being able to, you know, just have it shipped and everything, and being able to upgrade and do some of these fun features. Change the handlebars is really cool, and the racks too. You know, it can become a little expensive, but if you don't need those things, like you've got a really solid kind of a base unit with decent support and warranty. So it's like 1 year on all the electronics, and I think 3 years on the frames. So very cool that way. Might be time to just hop on this thing and do a little ride test. Okay, well, I'm just in the first level of assist here, and I'm on sand, and it really feels good. You know, I'm not sinking in. feel like I got a lot of traction and stability. And that first level is just, it's definitely enough to take away the edge of the weight on this bike, you know? I'm even kind of going across the grass here, not even pushing very hard, even though it's a torque sensor. It feels, it's almost surprising just like looking at the specs, how well this performs. Because I try a lot of bikes like 350 watt and I get into the grass and I try to use the throttle and it struggles. And this one just doesn't. It's also really responsive. Here, I'm gonna turn it up to like level 5 now, so you can hear the motor a little bit more, but actually, you know, see how quickly it cuts on, cuts off. You know, very responsive. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I feel like the integration of the torque sensor on this model just was done really well. Let's get back out to that beach. You know, it's a whole lot of fun. This has been a great bike, just a fun experience, I guess, like testing it out in the environment that it was kind of built for. Surface 604, the name actually comes from 604. It's like the phone area code for Vancouver, Canada, where they have a bunch of different surfaces. So you've got beach, you've got mountains with snow, and you've got city. And this is the kind of bike that can kind of take all of those different environments on, and you can have a lot of fun, whether it's a commuter bike or you're just romping around. I love that. I guess in closing, the one thing that I would remind you about is, you know, you turn the display off, just remember to turn that battery pack off too. It's kind of that little extra step. Keep it charged. If you want to help this thing last, I imagine, you know, someone could get this and be up in the mountains and have a cabin. Store the battery inside in like a cool, dry environment to help it last. Top it off every few months if you haven't used it. Try to store it between like, you know, 20 and 80%, and that'll help it last, because this stuff is high quality stuff. It's like Samsung sells, but with a little bit of extra care and attention, you can really help it to go the distance. So that's the Surface 604 Boar. For the full write-up on this and the older model and some other fat bikes, I'll see you back at ElectricBikeReview.com. Ride safe. Nice. Did pretty well up that hill. It's level 2 assist and, you know, pretty comfortable.